the story has to start with Brock Purdy. The fact that Brock Purdy is playing at an elite level. Now, Brock Purdy's not on the elite tier of quarterbacks. Let's not get that twisted. But it feels like there's nothing that Brock Purdy can't do. You want him to scramble? He can scramble. You want him to go off platform? He can do that. You want him to improvise a little bit? 100%. You need a big throw from him in a big moment? Absolutely 1000% he can. And I look at that touchdown throw to Kyle Juszczyk yesterday, where he stepped up, stepped back, stepped up, and delivered a perfect short throw to Kyle Juszczyk in the end zone. That may have been the best play that we've seen Brock Purdy make in his NFL career. That watching him last night, you just saw such of a perfect synergy between a quarterback that can do exactly what a system asks of him and also a system that can elevate the skill set of a certain quarterback. And the fact that we saw, I hate if we always go back to where a player was drafted, but I do think it was almost like poetic justice that we got the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams and Mr. Irrelevant on full display going blow for blow. And I think Caleb Williams deserves all of the hype and the love and the waxing poetic as much as we possibly can after his performance yesterday, even in a losing effort. But the number 1 story of that game, the number 1 story, I think one of the number 1 stories of the weekend, is what Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers offense did, even not at full strength.
Yeah, well, look, and where we will disagree a little bit is I do think that Brock Purdy is elite. And look, this isn't just about Brock. This is, yeah, I'll go fully there. Look, I've been on the Brock train for a minute, but here's my whole argument. When people say, oh, it's a system, I don't really care. In the system he's in, I don't really care. Like, to me, it doesn't really matter how we get to the final answer. We get to the final answer. 3 touchdowns in the air, two on the ground, 5 touchdowns in this game for Brock Purdy. And to your point, the athleticism was on display, moving around. A couple of those runs were just sneaky, going around showing his mobility, which I think maybe deserves a little bit more credit. Honestly, you mentioned that we don't like to talk about the draft status. I think if he didn't have the number next to his name of being Mr. Irrelevant, we would have bought in on Brock Purdy being elite a long time ago. He's no more system dependent than any other quarterback that is system dependent, which is frankly all of them. Like Bo Nix probably isn't Bo Nix without Sean Payton. I have no idea if Jalen Hurts is really him in another system, but Jalen Hurts with the Eagles is a Super Bowl quarterback. Brock Purdy at this point, absolutely on fire, and his ability to carve up the Bears. Like, look, the Bears defense is turnover dependent. If they can't get a turnover, the rest of it is a little bit bend, don't break. I get that. But they just went up and down the field with ease. And this is where Brock's doing what Brock does best. And I don't really care whether it's because Brock and Kyle Shanahan have the right love language together. All I care about is the result. And the result that we see with Brock Purdy over and over and over again is elite. I think he deserved a massive contract. I think he deserves to be put in that category. And frankly, this year, I think, if we'd had the glory of watching this an entire season instead of an injured season where he didn't play as much, I think he'd be an MVP candidate. Brock is that good.
It's not an indictment on a quarterback to say that he's in a perfect system that allows him to play at an elite level. I feel like that gets misconstrued a lot. That if you say a guy is a quote unquote system quarterback, it's almost like you're putting a red scarlet letter on his jersey. And that's not the case in the slightest. It's more so just an admiration of Brock Purdy and how he's been elevated, not just by the system, but also the players around him. Look, this 49ers team, it has been so incredibly impressive. And I do want to give credit to the coaching staff, but first I just want to look at the players and the X's and O's and the product that we saw on the field last night. It doesn't matter if you don't have George Kittle. You have a guy in Jake Tonjes that can step up in the passing game. That Ricky Pearsall can pretty much do anything. He is such a jack of all trades kind of receiver. If you need him to stretch the field, if you need him to block, and then you have Juwan Jennings, who is, I think, one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. Show me a more willing blocker of a wide receiver in the NFL, and I think you'd be incredibly hard pressed to do it. And then you add in what Christian McCaffrey has been doing. I feel like we're not talking enough about Christian McCaffrey, that Christian McCaffrey had the down year last year, and then all of a sudden he's just totally and completely off of our radar. Christian McCaffrey had his 11th 100-plus yard rushing game of the season yesterday. He also is such a key cog of what this offense wants to do. So if you want to talk about Brock Purdy in the system, I think you also, which is an okay thing to do, we are allowed to do that without taking credit away from Brock Purdy and his ability to execute the system at a high level. But also, I think you have to add in the pass catching core, that it just feels like plug and play. And that's no disrespect to those guys, but it is almost okay. George Kittle goes down, it's the next man up, and it doesn't really feel like you miss a beat. And then also what CMC is doing on the ground as well. This 49ers offense is just such a well oiled machine. And I think last night, and we talked a little bit about the 49ers this season, not nearly as much as we've talked about other contenders or other teams in the NFC, like the Rams or, the Packers, so on and so forth. Last night to me was the exclamation point on what I feel like we have been seeing from the 49ers. Been the beneficiary of a light schedule. Let's be honest. It is what it is. And it was one thing to beat the Titans, to beat the Saints, but to be able to do it against a Chicago Bears team with Caleb Williams playing at say level, I was the exclamation that I needed to see that, yeah, no. This 49ers team absolutely positively is legit, not just the beneficiaries of a light schedule.
Well, and Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot of conversation right now for Coach of the Year to me. And the way that they've been able to withstand so many injuries. Look, their defense can't get any pressure. Everybody's talking about that. That's fine. They're without half their stars on the field, like on the defensive side of the ball. Also, they lose Trent Williams in the game last night to a hamstring injury. We'll see what that means. We now get a matchup on Saturday this weekend between the 49ers and the Seahawks. And the winner of that game will have the number one seed and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. There is a very real chance. If the 49ers win that game, they could stay at home, not only through all of the playoffs, but just a reminder that the Super Bowl is in San Francisco this year. The 49ers would have a path to literally playing every home game, or every playoff game, including the Super Bowl at home. So got to give a lot of love to the 49ers in a big win.